16th century, like the time of the Ivan the Terrible. And at that time, it was no longer Moscow, one could say, but we could speak of sort of Ivan the Terrible called himself Tsar of Russia. And at that time, well, the Mongol threat was over, so one of the big achievements of Ivan the Terrible was conquest of Kazan, which was one of the descendant states of Mongols, one could say. And of course, this meant the end of the Mongol threat in a symbolical sense to Russia. So it was one of the big
Milestones.
yeah, one could say so.
So
And
Ivan, that was Ivan's accomplishment.
yeah, Ivan the Terrible. Well, he expanded Russia, but of course, he also was a very brutal ruler with. One of the he also crushed sort of any sort of independence of nobility, for example, of the church, and it. He modernized Russia, but also Russia of his time was very somewhat isolated from the West. Like there were no contacts with the West at the time, and so Russia didn't have a renaissance, for example. And it was the reason was also because Orthodox Church didn't want such influences, but also because rulers like Ivan made Russia separate from the Western Europe, from the European states.
Okay, two questions.
Mm.
Ivan the Terrible, it must not have been a self-assigned name.
Yeah, well, I don't certainly think it wasn't, and it was well. His reputation wasn't favorable, and he of course ended up in many wars with Sweden, for example. Actually, one of the interesting historical facts was that Ivan the Terrible and King John III of Sweden used to send letters to each other, insulting each other, and maybe this is one fact that as a Swede would interest you.
That's interesting, indeed. And second question pertains to the Mongols. So you said that he kind of neutralized that threat.
Well, one could say that it was sort of over already, but of course it was. One could show that Mongols in no way they couldn't like the last of the Mongol successor states were destroyed back then. So it's like one could say that in Crimea there was still like one of the states left, but anyway, there wasn't sort of. It was a symbolic victory over the long Mongol yoke, if you could say that. Mm.
And what was it that made the Mongol opposition like so fierce? Like, what did they? Was it the horse warfare, or what was it that was so bad?
Well, of course, when the Mongols conquered Russia, it was, of course, they were one of the most organized sort of, with tens of thousands of armed horsemen, force to be reckoned with. But then afterwards, well, Mongol Empire became more divided. It was weakened, and of course, when Ivan the Terrible was ruling, of course, Mongols they were much weaker position, like the Tatars and the Mongols were in a much more weaker position. So one couldn't speak that at that time they were not as strong as they were earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know when did they peak, the Mongols, at their
Well,
strength?
At the 1200s in the 13th century. So
Okay.
yeah.
But with Ivan the Terrible, that was 1600s. You said?
Yeah.
So I guess there was no guns yet, or was there?
Well, there was artillery.
There was. Okay.
Yeah. and of course it helped a lot to with the conquest of Kazan and other Mongol principalities. And Ivan the Terrible at that time achieved a great Russian empire, but of course then happened one of the periods, and the Russian history has quite a few of them, when sort of internal turmoil compared with external threats destroyed sort of previously stable situation. So after Ivan the Terrible died, he didn't have a sort of strong successor, and in Russia there became sort of a period of chaos, and which was exactly when, as you said, Poles invaded country, for example, and Swedes also, like Swedish army conquered Novgorod and so forth. And at the end of it, Russia stayed, there was a new dynasty which came to power, the dynasty of the Ivan the Terrible. He was descendant of Rurik, at least as they said that, but his dynasty came to an end during the period of chaos, and then Romanovs became to power. But of course Russia was then smaller. Swedes took over, for example, the region which is now St. Petersburg, for example. So Russia lost connection to the Baltic Sea as a result of the period of turmoil.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip of the HH podcast. If you want another clip, press down here to your right. And if you want to see the full unedited episode, press down here to your left. And last of all, please subscribe here in the middle. Thank you.